The stars were quiet that night when everything changed. Captain Danny Marsh stood on the bridge of the Starward Hope, watching the endless darkness through the observation window. His ship was a diplomatic vessel, built for peace rather than war. It carried ambassadors instead of weapons. Some people laughed at ships like his. They said diplomacy was useless in a galaxy full of predators. Danny had always believed otherwise. The alarm broke the silence like a scream. "Captain, we're receiving a distress signal," said his communications officer, a young woman named Grace. Her fingers moved quickly over her console. "Sir, you need to see this." Danny walked over and looked at the screen. His blood went cold. The signal carried a symbol that every human child learned to fear: 3 curved claws around a burning sun, the mark of the Dominion. There were legends, nightmares. They stood 8 feet tall with scales harder than steel. Their claws could cut through metal like paper. Their eyes glowed in the dark, and their teeth were designed for one purpose only: killing. They had conquered dozens of star systems. They had destroyed entire civilizations. The galaxy called them the ultimate predators, and no one used that title lightly. And now they were sending a distress signal. "That's impossible," Danny whispered. "The don't ask for help, they don't need help." "Sir, there's more," Grace said. Her voice was shaking now. "They're asking for humans specifically. They want to speak with us." Danny felt the eyes of his entire crew on him. Fear filled the bridge like smoke. Everyone knew what they did to other species. Everyone knew the stories of burned worlds and eaten prisoners. And yet, there was something in that signal. Something that sounded almost like desperation. "Open a channel," Danny ordered, "and call Ambassador." Lisa arrived on the bridge within minutes. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had negotiated peace between species that hated each other for thousands of years. Nothing scared her, but when she saw the symbol on the screen, even she paused. "This is Ambassador Lisa of Earth," she said into the communicator. "We received your signal. What do you want?" The response came not in words but in an image. The main screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at the bridge of a warship. It was dark and red, built from metal and bone. And standing in the center was a creature that made Danny's heart stop. She was massive. Her scales were deep purple and her eyes burned like yellow fires. Scars covered her body, each one a story of battle and death. This was Aura, the warlord of the 7th Fleet. She had killed more enemies than most species had members. She was death given form. But something was wrong. Aura was holding something in her arms, something small and wrapped in cloth. It moved weakly and a tiny sound came from it. A cry, a baby's cry. "Humans," Aura spoke. Her voice was deep and rough like stones grinding together. "We come not as enemies, we come as parents." The words seemed to hurt her. Lisa could see it. This proud warrior, this killer of worlds, was struggling to say something that her entire being rejected. "There is a sickness," Aura continued. "We call it the hollow rot. It came from nowhere. It spreads through our young like fire. Our children are dying. Millions of them. We have tried everything. Our doctors, our medicines, our technology. Nothing works. They die in our arms while we watch." The baby in her arms cried again. Danny saw something he never thought he would see. A tear rolling down the face of a warlord. "Our scientists found something," Aura said. "Your species, humans, your bodies produce chemicals, things related to caring and bonding. These things might save our young, your touch, your warmth, your love." She said the word like it was foreign to her. "We do not understand it, but our children respond to it. In tests, infected young who were held by humans showed improvement. We do not know why, we only know it works." Lisa stepped forward. "You want us to care for your children?" "Yes," Aura's voice broke. "We are asking, we are begging. We who have never begged anyone for anything. We who have conquered the galaxy with our claws. We are on our knees before you humans. Save our children, please." The bridge was silent. Danny looked at his crew. He saw fear in their eyes, but he saw something else too. He saw pity. He saw compassion. These were humans, after all, and humans could never ignore a crying child, no matter what species it came from. "Why us?" Lisa asked. "You could have gone to any species that have advanced medicine, that have healing technology. Why humans?" Aura made a sound that might have been a laugh. "We went to them first, all of them. They refused. They said helping us would make us stronger. They said our children should die so that the galaxy would be safer. They looked at our bobbies and saw only future enemies." She paused. "We came to you because you are different. You are weak. You have no claws, no armor, no natural weapons. And yet your species nurtures everything. You adopt animals. You care for sick creatures. You love things that are not your own. We thought, we hoped, that maybe you would love our children too." Lisa looked at Danny. He nodded slowly. "Send the coordinates," Lisa said. "We will meet you. We will help you." Aura closed her eyes. Her massive body seemed to shrink with relief. "You will have the eternal gratitude of the Dominion. Whatever you want, we will give. Whatever enemies you have, we will destroy. You are saving our future." "We're not doing this for rewards," Lisa said quietly. "We're doing this because they're children, and no child should die alone and scared." Aura stared at her for a long moment. "We do not understand your kind," she finally said, "but perhaps that is why the universe sent us to you." The screen went dark. Danny stood in the silence that followed, his mind racing. The galaxy's greatest predators had just placed their most precious treasure in human hands. Either this was the beginning of something wonderful, or it was a trap that would destroy them all. But looking at his crew, at the determination in Lisa's eyes, at the hope that was slowly replacing fear, Danny knew what choice humanity would make. They would help. They would care. They would love these children as their own. Because that was what humans did. And maybe, just maybe, that was their greatest strength. The news spread across Earth like wildfire. The monsters from every scary story were sending their children to humanity. Some people celebrated. Most people were terrified. Dr. Price had spent 20 years studying alien biology. He had seen creatures from 100 different worlds. But nothing had prepared him for the moment when the first transport ship landed on Earth and opened its doors. They came out carrying bundles, hundreds of warriors, each one holding a small form wrapped in dark cloth. The warriors walked slowly, carefully, as if they were carrying glass. Their yellow eyes watched the human crowd with a mixture of hope and fear. These creatures, who had never feared anything in their lives, were afraid now. Afraid of what the humans might do to their bobbies. Stepped forward. He was a tall man with kind eyes and steady hands. He had volunteered to lead the research team that would figure out how to save these children. Behind him stood Dr. Amy, a pediatric specialist who had worked with sick children for 30 years. She had never worked with alien children before, but she figured love was the same in any language. "We're ready," said to the lead warrior. "We will take good care of them." The warrior looked at him for a long moment. Then slowly she handed over the bundle in her arms, took it carefully. The cloth fell away and he saw his first infant up close. She was the size of a human newborn but covered in soft scales that glowed faintly orange. Her eyes were closed and her breathing was weak. Dark spots covered her scales, the mark of the hollow rot eating away at her life. She made a small sound, something between a growl and a whimper. Held her against his chest. The baby stopped whimpering. She pressed her face against his shirt and let out a long, slow breath. The warrior who had given her to him made a strange sound. It took a moment to realize she was crying. "She has never been calm before," the warrior said. "She has screamed since the sickness began, but with you, she is peaceful." Amy moved among the other warriors, taking bobbies into her arms, directing the human volunteers. Each time an infant touched human skin, the same thing happened. The crying stopped. The struggling stopped. The bobbies relaxed in a way they never had with their own kind. That night in the hastily built research center, Amy made a discovery that would change everything. "It's our lullabies," she told, her voice full of wonder. Watch this." She held a sick infant and began to sing. It was an old song, something her grandmother had sung to her when she was small. The baby's scales began to glow brighter. The dark spots of infection seemed to shrink. Monitors showed the infant's vital signs improving with every note. "Human voices trigger a healing response," Amy explained. "Our tone, our rhythm, our emotion. It activates something in their biology, and look at this." She showed him another reading. "Skin-to-skin contact raises their body temperature to optimal levels. They're cold-blooded, but they need warmth to fight infection. Our natural body heat is perfect for them." The Sanctuary Initiative was born 3 days later. The United Nations voted to accept all children who needed care. Facilities were built around the world. Volunteers were trained. And for the first time in history, humans became parents to an alien species. But not everyone was happy. In Montana, a farming couple named and Ben Dawson sat in their empty house and watched the news. They had lost their own child 5 years ago to a disease no doctor could cure. The nursery still stood empty. The toys still sat untouched. Had thought she would never hold a baby again. Then she saw the report about volunteer foster families. She saw the tiny alien infants in human arms. She saw their glowing scales and heard their strange little cries. And something inside her heart opened up again. "We could help," she said to Ben. "We have the room, we have the love." Ben took her hand. "Are you sure they're aliens, predators?" "They're bobbies," she said firmly. "Sick, scared bobbies, and I think I need this. I think we both do." 2 weeks later, a transport arrived at their farm. A warrior stepped out carrying a small bundle. The infant inside had scales that glowed soft orange, like embers in a dying fire. Took her in her arms and felt tears streaming down her face. "Hello, little Ember," she whispered. "Welcome home." The baby looked up at her with golden eyes. Then she made a sound that might have been a purr and pressed her face against shoulder. But as families across Earth opened their homes, darkness gathered. A group called Terra first began to spread fear. They put up signs saying the children were spies. They claimed this was all a trick, that the bobbies would grow up to be killers who would destroy humanity from within. Their leader, an angry man with cold eyes, appeared on every news channel with the same message: "Send them back, before it's too late." Protests erupted outside sanctuary facilities. Some people threw rocks, others carried weapons. Commander Torres of Earth Defense found himself in an impossible position. He had to protect the alien children while also respecting the right of humans to protest. Every day felt like walking on broken glass. But the volunteers never stopped. Every night in homes across the planet, humans held alien bobbies and sang them songs. They fed them and cleaned them and loved them. The hollow rot retreated inch by inch. Lives were saved one lullaby at a time. Up in orbit, the fleet watched everything. Aura stood on her bridge, staring at the blue planet below. Her claws twitched with protective instinct. Every fiber of her being screamed to descend and destroy anyone who threatened her people's children. But she held back. She watched the human parents loving her species young. She watched them fight their own kind to protect alien bobbies. She saw something she had never seen before in all her years of war and conquest. She saw kindness that expected nothing in return. "Strange creatures," she muttered to her second-in-command. "They have no claws, no armor, no venom, and yet they might be the most dangerous species we have ever met." "Dangerous?" her officer asked. "They are helping us. How are they dangerous?" Aura was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than anyone had ever heard it. "Because they are making me feel something I have never felt before," she said. "They are making me feel hope." Below on a farm in Montana, little Ember fell asleep in his arms while Ben sang an old cowboy song about home. The baby's scales glowed warm and bright. The infection was fading. Life was winning. And somewhere in the darkness, The galaxy was beginning to understand that humanity's greatest weapon had never been ships or guns. It was love. 8 months had passed since the first children arrived on Earth. In that time, something remarkable had happened. Something that no scientist had predicted and no politician had planned for. The children were changing. Little Ember took her first steps on a sunny morning in Montana, watched with tears in her eyes as the small toddler walked across the kitchen floor on unsteady legs. Her scales had grown brighter and healthier. The dark spots of the hollow rot were completely gone, but that was not the remarkable part. "Mother Warmth," Ember said, reaching up with her small clawed hands. "Up, Ember wants up." She was speaking, not just sounds but words, human words mixed with growls. She was learning language faster than any human child, and she had given a name: Mother Warmth, the one who held her close, the one who chased away the cold. Picked her up and held her tight. Ben walked in from the fields and Ember made a happy sound, reaching for him too. "Father Strong," she said, "Ember loves." Ben's tough farmer face melted into a smile. He took her from and lifted her high, making her squeal with delight. Outside, the chickens scattered as Ember roared a tiny roar of happiness. It was a sound no child had ever made before. It was the sound of joy. Dr. Amy documented everything. She traveled from sanctuary to sanctuary, recording the incredible changes in the young. Their aggression levels had dropped dramatically. They played with human children instead of fighting. They laughed instead of growled. They were becoming something new, something that combined the strength of their species with the gentleness they learned from humans. "It's imprinting," Amy explained during one of their late-night research sessions. "But deeper than anything we've seen. They're not just bonding with individual humans, they're absorbing human values, compassion, empathy, love. These concepts didn't exist in culture before. Now they're being written into these children's very souls." The news reached the fleet. Most warriors were amazed. Their children were surviving, thriving, becoming stronger in ways they never imagined. But not everyone was pleased. Elder was one of the oldest alive. He had fought in 100 wars. He had killed more enemies than he could count. And he watched the reports from Earth with growing horror. "They are corrupting our young," he declared to the council. "These children will not be warriors. They will be soft, weak. They will play instead of fight. They will love instead of hate. When they return to us, our enemies will slaughter them like prey." Aura stood to face him. "Would you rather they die from the plague? Would you rather we have no children at all?" "I would rather we find another way," snarled. "These humans are changing the very nature of our species. Our children will not know how to kill. How will they survive in this galaxy?" "Maybe," Aura said quietly, "killing is not the only way to survive." The council erupted in argument. For the first time in history, their people were divided not by territory or power, but by an idea. Some believed the changes were good. Others believed they were disaster. Civil war hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. On Earth, a different kind of storm was brewing. The Terra First group had been growing. Their message of fear spread through social media and secret meetings. And one night, they decided to act. The sanctuary in Oregon was home to 47 children and their human caregivers. Security officer Chris Vega was working the night shift when the alarms went off. He looked at the monitors and saw trucks approaching, filled with armed men wearing masks. Chris was not a big man. He was not particularly brave. He was just a guy who needed a job and believed in protecting the innocent. But in that moment, looking at the sleeping children in their rooms, he made a choice. He locked down the facility. He sounded every alarm, and then he walked outside alone to face the attackers. "This facility is under my protection," he said, his voice steady despite his fear. "You will not touch these children." The Terra First leader laughed. "They're not children, they're monsters. They'll grow up to kill us all. We're saving humanity." "No," Chris said. You're just scared, and I understand that. The galaxy is big and scary. But these bobbies didn't choose to be born, they didn't choose to get sick. They just want to live, and I'm not going to let you hurt them." What happened next was over in seconds. The attackers rushed forward. Chris fought back with everything he had. He gave the other security officers time to arrive. He gave the police time to respond. He gave 3 infants time to be moved to safety. And then he was gone. The news spread across the world. A human man had died protecting alien children, not for money, not for glory, simply because it was right. The protests against the sanctuary stopped almost overnight. Even some Terra First members quietly walked away, ashamed of what their group had done. But the news also reached the fleet. Aura watched the footage in silence. She saw Chris Vega stand alone against armed attackers. She saw him fall. She saw his colleagues weeping over his body while the infants he saved cried in the background. Then she did something that shocked every watching. She performed the death rite. She spoke the sacred words that only spoke for their greatest warriors. She honored a human the way she would honor her own blood. "He was not," she said when the ritual was done, "but he had a warrior's heart. He died protecting young that were not his own. There is no greater honor." Elder watched from the shadows. He had planned to use the attack as proof that humans could not be trusted. Instead, he saw something that shook the foundations of everything he believed. He saw humans fight and die for children. He saw love stronger than fear. He saw courage without claws. For the first time in his long life, began to wonder if he had been wrong. At Chris Vega's funeral, humans and stood side by side. Warriors who had never cried before wept openly. Aura placed an honor stone on his grave. And in Montana, little Ember said a prayer in 2 languages, human, and for the man she had never met but who had helped save her kind. "Thank you, Braveheart," she whispered. "Ember will remember, Ember will make you proud." The galaxy was watching, and for the first time, other species began to understand what humanity truly was. Not prey, not weaklings, but something far more dangerous. Protectors 3 years. 3 years of lullabies and bedtime stories. 3 years of first words and first steps. 3 years of love given and love returned. And now it was ending. The hollow rot was gone. Scientists had used what they learned from humans to develop a cure. No more children would die from the plague. The crisis was over. Which meant it was time for the young to go home. Dawson sat on her porch in Montana, watching little Ember play in the yard. Ember was not so little anymore. She stood 4 feet tall, her orange scales gleaming in the sunlight. She was chasing butterflies, careful not to hurt them with her small claws. She was laughing, a sound that mixed human giggles with chirps. "Mom," Ember called out, using the human word now. "Look, Mom, pretty flying bugs." Smiled, but her heart was breaking. The message had arrived that morning. A transport would come in 3 days to collect Ember and take her to her birth clan. After 3 years of being a family, they would have to say goodbye. Ben came out and sat beside her. He did not say anything. He did not need to. They both knew what was coming. The same scene played out across Earth. In Japan, a man named held his son and tried not to cry. In Brazil, a grandmother rocked 2 twins and whispered old songs to them. In Canada, in Australia, in countries across the world, human families prepared to give back the children they had come to love. The day the transports arrived was the hardest day in human history. Ember saw the ship land in the field behind her home. She had been excited at first, eager to see others of her kind. But when the door opened and a massive warrior stepped out, she suddenly understood. "No," she said, backing away. "No, Ember stays. Ember stays with Mother Warmth and Father Strong." Knelt down to face her. "Sweetheart, we talked about this. You have another family, your birth family. They love you too." "Don't know them," Ember said, her golden eyes filling with tears. "No you, no home, no Montana. Ember is human." You're, said gently, you're strong and beautiful and you have a whole world waiting for you. Don't want world, want mom. The warrior who had come to collect Ember watched this exchange in silence. Her name was, and she was Ember's birth mother. She had given her baby to humans to save her life, never expecting this. Never expecting to see her child cling to aliens as if they were blood. You have changed her, said Tu. There was no anger in her voice, only confusion. She speaks your language, she thinks your thoughts, she is soft. She is loved, replied, standing up to face the towering predator. And soft is not weak. She is kind and gentle and brave. She is everything good about both our species. Stared at her for a long moment. Then she looked at Ember, who was hiding behind legs, peeking out with frightened eyes. Little one, said In, do you know who I am? Ember shook her head. I am the one who carried you inside me. I am the one who wept when you got sick. I am the one who gave you to these humans because I could not bear to watch you die. Her voice cracked. I have dreamed of holding you again every night for 3 years. Ember slowly stepped out from behind. She looked at with new eyes. Then she looked at. Her small face showed a struggle that no child should have to face. Ember has 2 mothers, she asked. Smiled through her tears. Yes, baby, you have 2 mothers, and you have room in your heart for both of us. What happened next surprised everyone. Ambassador Lisa, who had been watching the reunions across Earth, proposed a solution that seemed impossible. She called it the Shared Family Accord. The children would not be taken from their human families. Instead, they would live in both worlds. Joint colonies would be built where humans and lived side by side. Academies would be created where young of both species learned together. The children would spend time on Earth and time on Prime. They would have human parents and parents. They would be bridges between 2 worlds. Elder, who had changed greatly since Chris Vega's sacrifice, stood before the council and supported the plan. I was wrong, he admitted, his old voice heavy with shame. I thought humans would weaken our children. Instead, they have made them stronger in ways I never understood. Our young have learned to love without losing their strength. They have learned to be gentle without becoming prey. They are the future of our species, and that future includes humanity. The vote was unanimous. Dawson was offered a special position. She would become the first human nest guardian on Prime. She would help raise young the way she had raised Ember. She would teach them songs and stories and the value of kindness. Ben sold the farm in Montana. They packed everything they owned. And when the transport came to take them to their new home, Ember held both her mother's hands, on one side, on the other. 2 worlds, 1 family. But as the celebrations continued, danger was growing. Far across the galaxy, the collective had been watching. They were an old enemy of the, defeated many times but never destroyed. They had spent generations fearing power, and now they saw something that made their cold hearts fill with cruel hope. They were distracted. Their warriors were focused on children instead of war. Their fierce hearts were learning softness. Their claws were being used to hold bobbies instead of weapons. The leaders gathered in their dark council chambers and made a decision. They are weak, their commander declared. Their alliance with humans has corrupted them. Now is the time to strike. Now is the time to destroy them once and for all. A fleet began to gather in the shadows of dead stars. Thousands of warships, millions of soldiers, all pointed toward one target. Prime. They expected to find a weakened enemy. They expected easy victory. They had no idea what they were about to face. Because they had made one terrible mistake. They had forgotten about the humans. The sky above Prime turned dark with enemy ships. The fleet emerged from hyperspace like a swarm of angry insects. Thousands of vessels, each one bristling with weapons. They had waited centuries for this moment. They had watched them become soft. They had watched them play with human children instead of training for war. And now they had come to end the greatest predators in the galaxy once and for all. Dawson was teaching a group of young when the first alarm sounded. She gathered the children quickly, moving them toward the underground shelters. Ember, now 7 years old and standing nearly 5 feet tall, helped her guide the little ones. "Mom, what's happening?" Ember asked. "Bad people are coming," said, "but we're going to be okay, I promise." Appeared at the entrance to the shelter. Her scales had gone dark with battle readiness. Her claws were extended. The warrior who had learned to be gentle was preparing to be fierce again. "Take the young ones deep," told, "I must fight." "I'm staying," Ember said suddenly, her small claws extended for the first time. "This is my home. Both my homes are here. I will fight too." Looked at her daughter, at this strange mix of strength and human heart. For a moment, pride overwhelmed her. "You are too young for battle," she said, "but you are not too young to be brave. Protect the little ones. That is your fight today." Ember nodded solemnly. She took his hand in one claw and a frightened toddler's hand in the other. "I will protect them all," she said, "like Chris Vega protected us." The battle began with fire and fury. Warships rose to meet the invasion. The sky became a storm of explosions and burning metal. They had expected easy victory. What they found was something else entirely. The new generation of the ones raised by humans fought differently than their ancestors. They didn't charge blindly into battle. They coordinated. They communicated. They worked together in ways had never done before. They protected each other not just from instinct, but from love. Young warriors called out warnings to save their comrades. They shared information constantly, thinking like one unit instead of individual hunters. They used strategies that mixed ferocity with human creativity. And when one fell, the others fought harder, not for revenge, but for the family they were protecting. They were shocked. This was not the disorganized, rage-driven enemy they expected. These were something new, something stronger. But even with their new strength, they were outnumbered. They kept coming, wave after wave. The defense was failing. Ships exploded. Warriors died. The enemy pushed closer to the planet. And then something appeared on the edge of the star system. It started as a single ship. The Starbound Hope, still commanded by Captain Danny Marsh, now gray-haired but still strong. His voice crackled over every channel. "Prime, this is Captain Danny Marsh of Earth. We received your distress call. Help is on the way." Behind him, more ships emerged from hyperspace. Then more and more. Thousands of human vessels poured into the system. Military ships from Earth Defense Command. Civilian transports modified with weapons. Private yachts piloted by volunteers. Anyone who could fly had come. Dr. Price, now old and tired but still fighting, commanded a medical frigate loaded with doctors and supplies. Commander Torres led the main battle fleet, his face hard with determination. Lisa, too old for combat, sent messages of encouragement from Earth. And from every ship, the same message was broadcast. "Our children are on that planet. You want them, come through us first." The commander could not understand what he was seeing. Humans, the weakest species in the galaxy, flying into a battle that was not their war. Humans, who had no claws or armor, facing the might of the fleet. It made no sense. He opened a channel to the lead human ship. "Why are you here?" he demanded. "These are not your people. This is not your fight. Leave now and we will spare your species." Danny Marsh smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a parent who had found the monster under the bed. "You asked why the fiercest predators in the galaxy trusted us with their children," he said. "It's because we're something you'll never understand. We're not the strongest. We're not the fastest, but we will burn down the stars themselves for the ones we love. And these children, they're ours now too." He cut the channel and gave one order: all ships attack. What followed would be remembered in galactic history for 10,000 years. Humans and fought side by side. Human pilots flew cover for assault ships. Warriors protected human medical vessels. When a human cruiser was damaged, ships formed a shield around it. When a dreadnought lost power, human engineers boarded and fixed it under fire. In the shelter beneath the surface, held the young ones close and sang lullabies to keep them calm. Ember stood guard at the entrance, her young claws ready to defend her family. Above them, two species that had once been strangers were becoming something more. They were becoming family. The Broke, their commander, watching his mighty fleet crumble before an enemy powered by love instead of hate, gave the order to retreat. As his ships fled, he sent one final message. "What are you?" he asked. "What have you become?" Aura answered. She stood on her bridge, wounded but unbowed, with human blood and blood on her claws. Behind her, a human medic was treating her injuries. In front of her, human and officers worked together to coordinate the final push. "We are family," she said simply, "and family protects each other." When the battle was over, the galaxy was different. The Galactic Council met to discuss what they had witnessed. Species that had dismissed humans as weak now looked at them with new eyes. They had seen humans cross the galaxy to fight for children that were not even their species. They had seen love stronger than fear. They had seen compassion become a weapon more powerful than any claw or fang. Ember, fully grown now, stood before the council as the first ambassador of the new era. She wore the marks of both her peoples, human and. When she spoke, her voice carried the strength of her ancestors and the kindness of her adoptive world. "My human mother taught me a song," she said. "It goes, 'Love is the strongest thing.' I didn't understand it when I was young. Now I do. Love made the come to humanity for help. Love made humans take in children who looked like monsters. Love made them fight and die for us. And love made us all stronger than we ever were alone." She looked at the representatives of 100 species, all watching in silence. "The galaxy should know this truth. Never threaten a human's family. They don't have claws or fangs, they have something worse." She smiled, an expression that looked both fierce and gentle at the same time. "They have heart, and heart is the most dangerous weapon in the universe." Far away on Prime, Dawson watched her daughter's speech on a screen. Ben stood beside her, as he always did. Was there too, having become family in a way none of them ever expected. Around them, human and children played together in the sunlight. They chased each other through gardens that bloomed with flowers from two worlds. Their laughter mixed into one beautiful sound. The galaxy had asked why predators would trust their young to prey. Now everyone knew the answer. Because humans were never prey at all. They were parents, protectors, lovers of lost things. And in the end, that made them the most powerful species of all.